to episode 20 of the Dorton and Doetkott Debate Podcast. I am Lucas Dorton. Once again, I'm joined by Nick Doetkott. Nick, you made a promise for the fans last week and you did not deliver. What's going on?
I apologize, man. I was looking for the headband. I couldn't find it. I don't know what to do with it. I think I should get arrested. I can't lose a headband like that. That should be a crime. I don't know where it is.
Bro,
I gotta scour the house tomorrow and find it.
You gotta
get a bunch of laundry, so I don't know. I didn't see it in there. I don't know, man. I don't know.
For any of the fans at home, if you want to send Nick a complimentary headband, he's looking for one. So
yes, the wristband too. I don't know.
You're a mess, man. I don't know what's going on.
I am.
Well, anyway. So for episode 20, we're going back now to our top 10 series that we've been doing. We had a little break the last couple weeks with the NFL draft and talking about that and such. But now we are back doing our top 10 series. So today's top 10 is going to be the best underdog stories. So of our lives. So from the year we were born, 1997, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep. So 1997 on, anything that's happened in that time frame, so that we've potentially been able to watch it or seen highlight tapes where it's recent. So unfortunately, the 1980 U.S. men's hockey team is not going to make this list. We did number one, but it is not making the list.
Yeah, I just typed in like underdog stories. Just I always do to make sure I don't miss any obvious ones. And I see Miracle on Ice was number one. I'm like, oh, I bet Dorton wished he could put that one on.
Oh, that would definitely be number one for sure.
I mean, just to clarify, if there's some from like 2000 and I like barely even remember it, I didn't really do it. And like Leicester City, for example, I don't know, you might have that because that's obviously a huge upset. I'm just going to say it. I didn't put it on my list because, to be honest, I don't really care about European soccer. So just saying.
Hey, we're all
about put Leicester City on there because I don't want to go through a list, not put them on here, and then get heat for it. So I'm just going to tell you right now.
Well, there we go, folks. If there's any Leicester City fans out there, you can go ahead and stop the podcast now because Nick didn't put it. But maybe I put it on mine, so maybe stick along. You never know. But anyways, yeah, so it could just be moments. It could be runs, playoff runs. It could be individual players. So it's kind of wide open for what we wanted to do. I believe Colin Pouch recommended that we do this. I think this was his suggestion for that.
Thank you, Colin. I just seen him yesterday.
Oh, wow. But we're going to get right into the stems. So at number 10, Mr. Doetkott, what do you have as a top underdog story, number 10?
I don't know what you think about this one, but I personally, this is one of my favorites of the 10 that I have to watch. I have the UConn run through the Big East and NCAA tournament in 2011. They might not be the biggest underdogs in the world. I think they were like I believe a 4 seed that year in the NCAA tournament. But in the Big East tournament, they won like 5 games in 6 days. And then they just kept on rolling and won, obviously, every game in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
And Kemba Walker was obviously, one of the best college seasons we've seen. Yep. And they actually won the Maui Invitational that year as well. So they were like 14 or 15-0 in tournament games that year. It was crazy. And that's when the Big East was like the elite basketball conference. You had UConn, Pitt, Syracuse. I think like West Virginia was still in there that time. It was loaded. Louisville. So they had to go through like all these just gauntlets of teams, and they just kept winning. And I kind of jumped on the bandwagon. I was loving it. And like I said, they might not be the biggest underdogs, but at the end of the day, they were. So that's my number 10.
I like that one. That's kind of where Cardiac Kemba was born.
Funny story. I love that play, right? I just love that play. For the longest time, I thought he said party at Kemba, though. I didn't realize he said cardiac Kemba. Cardiac Kemba obviously makes more sense.
Yeah.
But, they won and they were all celebrating. I thought he said party at Kemba at first. It took a long time before I even realized it was cardiac Kemba. I'm like, oh, now I feel like an idiot.
And party at Kemba. You just hit a big shot. Let's go party.
right?
That's
It works, I guess.
For my number 10, I had Appalachian State college football team beating Michigan in 2007. Michigan, that was the first game of the season. Michigan was ranked 5th in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of one of those things where they were going in there essentially with the mindset of we're probably going to beat you by about 50, 60 points.
Yep.
And they came in there. Appalachian State won 34-32. The funny thing about that is that Michigan dropped out of the top 25 altogether after that game.
And they were what, 4 beforehand?
They were 5th. They were 5th, and then completely dropped out of the 25.
That was 07. So, yeah, I was going to say Denard Robinson, but that was well before him. Right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I had wrote that down on my list. I don't have that in my top 10, but I wrote it down. If I remembered it more, I mean, I obviously remember hearing about it. If I remember watching it or something, I might include it, but it just wasn't as big for me. But that upset was huge. Funny part is, wasn't Appalachian State actually ranked this year? They're actually pretty good now.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, at the time they were, crappy, but
right.
It's kind of funny though, because those teams like Michigan, they pay those teams like $1 million or a couple million to come play them, and then they come beat you and knock you out of the top 25. That would be awful as a Michigan fan.
Yeah, Michigan, I think, has been on the end of a few different upsets. Obviously, the Michigan State game a couple years ago, kickoff thing, and
that would be so brutal.
With the botched yardage on that one, but
right, yeah.
Michigan, sorry about it, fans. You have, but
it's fine by me. The only time I ever root for Michigan is if they play Wisconsin or Ohio State.
Fair. That's fair. Big Blue.
Or maybe over Penn State. I'd probably root Michigan over Penn State.
So number 9, Nick, who did you have for that, or what did you have?
I got my favorite athlete, with LeBron, Tim Tebow, and the 2011 Broncos. Now, I know they only ended up winning one playoff game, but they were 1-4 with Kyle Orton. Then Tim Tebow comes in. He goes 7-3 as a starter in the regular season, or 7-4. So they got kind of lucky. They made the playoffs at 8-8. But regardless, they made it in, and then they beat the Steelers on that play we all know, the Demaryius Thomas touchdown catch on the first play of overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Steelers were, they weren't obviously the 1 or 2 seed, but they were at the time still really good with that vaunted Steelers defense. And Tim Tebow just came in there and, he did what he always did. He didn't start off the game very well. The stats didn't look that great, but come crunch time, he got the job done. And that run was awesome to witness. They ended up losing to the Patriots eventually, but who doesn't lose to Tom Brady and the Patriots in the playoffs? So
it's true. I actually remember that game. I watched a lot of it up until probably about halftime, a little bit to the third quarter. But I just remember I had a massive headache. So I fell asleep on the couch and during the game, and I woke up like right as overtime started. And then I saw that play, and I mean, the Gators are my college sports team. Tim Tebow is one of my favorite players of the time. Yeah. And to see that happen, unbelievable.
I honestly don't remember if I even watched if I watched the whole game. I'm guessing I did because I was a big Tebow guy, but I know for sure, I vividly remember watching the play in overtime, and I was just pumped because I'm a huge Tebow guy. And for whatever reason, I've never really cheered for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're like the Packers of the AFC to me. I was just never a Steelers fan. So it was just awesome. It was awesome to see that.
Tebow mania at its height right there.
Yes.
So for me at number 9, I had the LA Kings winning the Stanley Cup as an 8 seed over the New Jersey Devils. Some of the teams that they had to beat to get to that point was the number 1 seed Vancouver Canucks. They beat them in 5. The 2 seed St. Louis Blues, they beat them in 4. And Coyotes beat them to go up against the Devils. I believe they won it. That was the Kings' first title of their franchise history, and that was a really improbable one. Again, as an 8 seed, I believe. I didn't write it down, but I was looking at some stats earlier today. And they said the percentage of teams that are the bottom seed to get out of the first round the success rate for that other team is like 95%. So it's something that did not happen very often. The odds in one.
Yeah, I remember that. I thought about putting them on here. I did not, but it was, I mean, obviously credit to the whole team, but right. I think the main reason Jonathan Quick was like standing on his head that whole playoffs. You know, he was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
They won it, what, the next year or 2 years later, too, then?
Yep.
Yeah. But I know that year as an 8 seed, I mean, they just got on a run and just, yeah, it was fun to watch. Was that the year they played the Rangers, or was that the second time they won? I don't remember.
That was the second time around.
Okay. All right. I remember that my favorite hockey game I've ever watched was in the Rangers-Kings Stanley Cup. So that's the other finals run. But regardless, that run they had as an 8 seed, that was a good run.
That was unbelievable. Great run for sure. What'd you have at number 8?
I had Holly Holm defeats Ronda Rousey.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm not a big UFC fan, but at the time, Ronda Rousey was undefeated. You know, it might not look like such a big defeat now because Rousey, towards the end of her UFC career, lost it, you know, more than once. But at the time, she was undefeated. I mean, a lot of people didn't even last like 40 seconds with her. It was like, boom, over. Yeah. Everybody thought Rousey was just going to demolish again. And then Holly Holm defeated her. And it was like the biggest upset in UFC history, probably still, men's or women's. So I have that at number 8. It definitely could be higher, but I have it at 8.
No, that's a really solid one. I didn't have that on here. Actually, spoiler alert, I didn't have any individual players or athletes on here. It was all teams. But that's a really solid one. That was a big upset.
Yes.
Cool for that. My number 8 was the 2005-2006 George Mason men's basketball team. They were an 11 seed. Originally, they kind of skated along with the regular season, didn't really do too well, lost in their conference playoffs. They didn't even think they were going to make the tournament. They ended up making it in as an 11 seed. And the teams that they had to beat to get to the Final Four was number 6, Michigan State, number 3, North Carolina, number 7, Wichita State, and number 1 ranked UConn. They eventually lost to my Florida Gators in the Final Four. The Gators ended up winning the whole thing that year. So sorry about it, George Mason. Maybe you could have been Gators. That's a really big, I mean, that was a phenomenal run. Obviously, I don't remember that too much. I remember hearing about it, but one of my cousins who lives in Virginia actually went to school at George Mason during that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, just to beat those teams to get all the way to the Final Four. You now hear in the tournament these days who's going to be the next George Mason. Maybe Florida Gulf Coast, potentially another team that comes to mind, but great run.
Yeah, I like that one. The NCAA tournament runs are always good, and that George Mason one is one of the more iconic ones. Yet another, and that's kind of the start of those Atlantic 10 teams. There's always one of them, it seems like, it makes a run. VCU that one year, that's an Atlantic 10 team. I believe they were an 8 or 9 seed. Not that it would have been an underdog this year, but Dayton, they were one of the favorites. That's an A-10 team. The Atlantic 10 has a lot of success in the tournament, it seems like. And George Mason was one of those teams. That was a heck of a run. And should think, granted, Michigan State was a 6 seed, but still, Michigan State, North Carolina, I mean, that's 2 of the blue bloods of college basketball.
Right.
UConn, I mean, they've won 2 national championships in the last decade.
And Wichita State, too, a team that typically they're they're college basketball that are just solid March Madness teams. You know they're going to get a middle seed. That's like Wichita State. They might not win it all, but they are a tough team to beat, that's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Duckett.
So number 7 is an individual one. After that, I got the rest team. But number 7, of all these on my list, this was probably like my second or third favorite to witness. Linsanity. I absolutely loved Linsanity. So, you know, Carmelo Anthony was injured. He was out. Now, Jeremy Lin, I remember, he was a Warrior before he was a Knick. And I remember watching just this random NBA game, some blowout. Jeremy Lin comes in with like, I don't know, a minute left. You know, nobody knew who the guy was at the time. It was just a scrub getting garbage minutes. But I remember Jeremy Lin. And all of a sudden the Knicks come around, and then he played like 55 total minutes, and then all of a sudden he gets a chance and he scores like 20 some points. Well, they put him back in, and then we all know what happened. He just started going off. He scored like 34 against Kobe and the Lakers. He had the buzzer beater against Toronto, I believe. And it didn't last long, but for like the 2 weeks or whatever it was just unbelievable. I mean, in a 2-week stretch, he was like the best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
And he was a bench warmer before that. And yeah, he's not like an all-star since then, but he's made himself a decent NBA career since then. Granted, he wasn't really a big part of it, but he won a ring with the Raptors last year. So I just loved Linsanity. So I had to put that on here.
Probably one of the last times the Knicks were even relevant, too.
Right? Yeah. Well, relevant for anything good, that is.
Yeah. They've had a lot of bad things. No shocker there. But for being good, yeah, Jeremy Lin, that was an insane run. I think that's a little similar. I think it's better than like the Alex Caruso thing. People are hyping up Alex Caruso a lot, but the difference is Alex Caruso still doesn't get a lot of playing time. Lin was getting playing time and putting up buckets.
And Caruso is not putting up like 25 points either. Now, Grant, I've watched a lot of Lakers games this year. Alex Caruso is actually really good. Like, he's really underrated. His plus minus is really good. His defensive plus minus is one of the best in the league. But yeah, I mean, he's nowhere near as good right now as Jeremy Lin was during Linsanity. And yeah, it was just so fun to just hear the hype around the dude for 2 weeks was just awesome.
So for my number 7, I had Leicester City with the 5,000 to 1 odds to win the Premier League. Their payroll that season was $48.2 million. That was about 17th place. So they certainly didn't have the highest payroll. I was reading up on it a little bit, and I can't remember the league that they're in before that. But essentially, I think they won that league, and then they got bumped up to this league. And so they said that's like equivalent to a minor league team winning the championship and then getting bumped up to like the AL East or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the comparison that they made. Obviously, soccer is not a sport that I know a lot about, and I'm not going to pretend that I know a lot about it because I don't. But, I mean, nonetheless, 5,000 to 1 odds in any sport is unbelievable. And the fact that this team was able to defy the odds with not really a high payroll at all either, too, is just absolutely amazing. So that was
So if you bet like $100 on them, you'd get like how much money?
Don't ask me. I'm not the math whiz.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I want to say, you bet $1, you get 5,000, but that can't be right.
Welcome to math class with Nick Doetkott, folks.
I should know. I like gambling, but I don't know. But if you put some money on Leicester City that year, holy cow, you benefited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He certainly came out a pretty rich man or woman. That's
wow.
But nonetheless, yeah, phenomenal odds. Like I said, I don't know much about soccer, but when you have that big of odds against you to win the Premier League, that's insane. So props to them. They had to make the list.
Yes.
What was number 6 for you?
So you'll like this one. I don't know if you'll agree with my placement of it or not. We'll see. The Rockies 07 run. I mean, they won 21 of 22 games. Let's see, 14 of 15 to make the playoffs. And then we all know that the play-in game against the Padres, which I'm telling you, Matt Holliday didn't touch home.
Yep.
But anyways, they won.
Yes, he
He
did.
didn't touch home. At least not right away. But anyways, they won. They beat Peavy and the Padres. They sweep their way through the National League playoffs. And then, unfortunately, they get swept by Boston. And if they would have won the World Series, they'd probably be much higher on the list. But, unfortunately, things didn't go well. But that run was unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable.
So I actually had at number 6 also the 2007 Rockies team.
All right, good. We're in agreement with that.
I thought that was pretty properly rated. They were in mid-September. They were 6.5 games out of first with 14 games left. So they won 13 of 14. So you were close. So they won 13 of 14 to get to that play-in game. And
oh yes, yeah.
even in that play-in game, there were times where we could not do anything. Josh Fogg was our pitcher. I'm going down memory lane here, folks. So but Josh Fogg was our pitcher. He was okay. I believe he was like 10-9, like 4.5 ERA, so nothing outstanding.
I don't even remember him.
Nickname was the Dragon Slayer because anytime it seemed like he always was matching up against an ace or the team's best pitcher, and he was always coming out on top. So they threw him for that game. He was okay. I believe at one point gave up a grand slam to Adrian Gonzalez. But
Who was a stud that year.
It was a stud. Went to extra innings. They actually took the lead. I believe that at the top of the 13th, 14th, I believe they took the lead. The Padres did. And who comes in but Trevor Hoffman to try and close the door on things? Probably best closer of all time. And
behind Mariano.
Yeah, second best behind Mariano.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say second.
No, okay. Fine. And we ended up tying the game, and then went to another extra inning, and now everybody knows the slide, which you're talking about. Jamie Carroll, short line drive to right field. Brian Giles throw to the plate, and JT Barrett couldn't handle it. Holiday slid in. He touched home.
After
the play. But 13-14 that play-in game. They were going into the World Series having won 21 of 22. Swept their way through the playoffs, and I will still say to this day, number one, the thing that killed us was that we had too many days off. We had just swept the Diamondbacks. Red Sox
sometimes
game series.
Yeah, sometimes sweeping can. I mean, obviously, you're up 3-0. You're gonna try to take care of business in game 4. I mean, there's no reason not to. But sometimes I think it can be a disservice to you. Sometimes the break might be a benefit, but a lot of times you sit too long. I don't think it's good.
And number two being that if we would have Cleveland Indians would have beat the Red Sox that year, I feel very confident of our chances to potentially have won a ship. But obviously, that did not happen. We got swept, and we're still waiting to go back to the World Series to this day. So one of these days,
you've been there more recent than us. So
that's fair.
Yeah, those game 163s, man. I'd say the Twins and the Rockies definitely have some good moments from them. Well, good and bad. We've each lost. Well, you lost one game play up in the wild card, so the Twins. But you had the game 163, and then we had 2 in a row. We won the one. They were pretty awesome. I mean, we were the one-game playoff before the one-game playoff. We kind of invented it.
Well, a thing. We're like, we all have a chance per game, So number 5, Nick, what'd you have?
I had the Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast make Sweet 16 run.
Oh.
I mean, it's only the Sweet 16, but I believe it's the only 15 seed or 15 or 16 to ever make the Sweet 16. And the way they were doing it, I mean, it was just flashy. It was just good. It was good basketball, too. It's not like they were turning it over, but they were opening it. It was like that Comer, I think. I mean, they were just all over the place. They beat Georgetown with Otto Porter. And then I believe they beat, San Diego State?
I can't remember.
Wasn't it your Florida team who beat them out then, I believe?
Yep.
If I remember correctly, you guys ruined all these tournament runs. George Mason, Florida Gulf Coast, just don't run into the Gators, I guess. But I remember I was at my buddy Dylan Pauly's house watching them against Georgetown. I remember watching that game, and man, that ending, Georgetown was down, but you just figured they were going to come back. They're the 2 seed, and this team just kept throwing oops and dunking it, and you're like, wow, they're not going to do it. They can't come back. This team won't give up. It was an impressive run. They were probably the most fun of any of the underdogs of the last few years.
That was a fun team to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I don't run, but that was the run that they made was pretty exciting.
The Golden Eagles.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
No.
And now their coach is the coach for like USC now, so he got a new job out of it.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Bethany, where I went to college, at one point, their basketball coach either before Bethany he was at Florida Gulf Coast or after Bethany he was there. I can't remember which one it was.
Okay.
I mean, pretty cool there. But So my number 5 was the 2019 St. Louis Blues winning the Stanley Cup. They had the worst record in hockey on January 3rd. They ended up winning 29 of their last 44 games to get there. And then obviously we all know what happened. They ended up winning, had a pretty solid playoff run. I don't think it was so much the players that were on the team because they had some pretty solid players, but they ended up firing their head coach, Mike Yao, and that's kind of, I think, what sparked things, and they made that phenomenal run and ended up winning the Stanley Cup, kind of finishing it off. That was a phenomenal story.
I don't have them on my list, but I probably should have. To be honest, they didn't even cross my mind. But yeah, I've been calling the NHL this year the National Hot Seat League because all the coaches getting fired, and we've both kind of mentioned maybe it might possibly be because of the St. Louis Blues. They were last in the league, they fired their coach, and all of a sudden, boom, they win the Stanley Cup. So maybe other teams think they can get that same success. But yeah, it was just crazy. They were literally the worst team in the league in January, and they won it all.
Yeah.
And speaking of betting with Leicester City, there was some Blues fan who put like 100 or something like that on the Blues, and they're the worst team in the league. And he made bank when they won it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be you someday, Nick. One of these times, if a team is struggling, you can just slap down $100 and say, "You got to win one of these times."
Yeah, right. There we go.
But yeah, nonetheless, that was a phenomenal run. Number 4, what'd you have?
I have the Giants beat the undefeated Patriots. You could probably say it could be higher. I could also argue it could be lower because although nobody really expected the undefeated Patriots to lose, it's still football. It's one game, it's not like a series. So, one game, I can easily see that happening. Anyways, it's a great upset nonetheless. At the time, I was so happy. I was totally against New England at the time, wanted New York to win so bad. Well, looking back at it, I would have loved to have Randy Moss get a ring and Tom Brady would have 7. But at the time, I was really happy that the Giants won. And that game was just crazy. I believe it was, Moss had the touchdown late to put him up. It looked like, New England's going to escape. And then we all know what happened. The David Tyree helmet catch and the Plaxico Burress touchdown. And they beat I think if New England wins that game, they'd probably go down as the best team in NFL history, over your undefeated Miami Dolphins.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To be honest, I still think they're probably the best team. They just didn't, finish it off. But, yeah, and the Giants beat them and just ended it. And it takes a lot to beat an 18-0 Patriots team that averaged like 40-some a game that year. So that was impressive.
2 things. Number 1, that was a phenomenal game. David Tyree, his helmet catch was actually his last ever catch that he had in the NFL.
Really? I didn't realize that.
That was his last ever catch. I remember I was watching a documentary or something, I don't know, last year or something, and they were talking about that. And they said the week of practice before, Eli Manning pretty much was saying that, like, Tyree was terrible. Like, he couldn't make a single catch. Like, he was just dropping everything. Arguably has one of the best catches in NFL history, and the biggest stage. So, last ever catch, I'd say that's probably a solid one to be remembered.
So that's kind of an underdog story inside the underdog story. David Tyree. Yeah. That's kind of interesting. Well, that's like, do you know Brett Favre, the year he was a Viking, the first year? He had that touchdown pass to Greg Lewis in the back of the end zone. Yep. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. Greg Lewis, I don't think that was his last ever catch, but he's got I think it's like under 20 total catches in his career. And then he had that one. So it was pretty remarkable. Yeah. It reminds me of that.
And then the second thing from that is the Miami Dolphins every single year, the members of the undefeated team that are still living, they like a champagne party every single year when the last undefeated team loses.
Really? That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like a little party remembrance, kind of like, what, we did a really cool thing that still to this day no one's been able to do. So kind of a fun thing. But for me at number 4, I had the 2009-2010 Philadelphia Flyers. Now I'll get to it and you'll understand why. They beat the New Jersey Devils in the first round, and then, I believe second round. I don't remember the round. And then in the Eastern Conference semifinals, they were down 3-0 in the series to the Boston Bruins, and they came back, won 4 straight. Eastern Conference Finals, they beat the Canadiens, and then they lost in the Stanley Cup that season, 6 games to the Chicago Blackhawks. That was the 4th team in the Big Four sports, so being NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, to come back from a 3-0 deficit. I believe that was the 3rd NHL team. I didn't look to see what other NHL teams did that, but that happened. Obviously, they didn't end up winning the Cup, but to come back down from 3-0 in the Eastern Conference semifinals is huge. Another fun fact, in Game 7 of that series, the Bruins got out to a 3-0 lead, and they ended up...
Yes, yeah. Down 3-0 in the series and in Game 7, yes. That's right. Yeah, so that's another good one that maybe should be on my list. Obviously, you're a much bigger hockey guy than me, so these come to you easier than they come to me, the hockey ones. But yeah, that's a really good one.
So really cool run. Coming down 3-0, certainly. We are now into the top 3, Nick. What did you have at number 3?
I have the Cavs come back from down 3-1 versus the Golden State Warriors. Now, I know this is a LeBron James Cavaliers team, so it's not like they're a huge underdog, but the Warriors were 73-9, so they weren't expected to win the series. Yep. And then considering they were down 3-1, even if they were the favorite in the series going into it, it would still be unlikely they'd win down 3-1. Yep. So, I mean, and plus this team actually won, whereas, Florida Gulf Coast, Rockies, Flyers, they didn't, win the championship. So I put them at 3 because that run was, I believe it's the only 3-1 comeback in NBA Finals history. Yep. Not playoff history, I don't think, but only one in Finals history. And it was the best regular season team of all time, record-wise, that they beat. So, I mean, that says enough right there, I think.
So I also have that at number 3.
All right.
That was also mine. So, folks, people that like to complain about us having the same list, sorry about it. I really don't.
I don't know. I'm worried our 1 and 2 might be the same too. We'll see.
But anyways, yeah, I had them as well. 2016 Finals, Cavs came back 3-1. No team had ever come back from a 3-1 deficit. Like you mentioned, it's not like the players on the team were underdogs. They had LeBron. Kyrie was there. Kevin Love solid as well too. But it was the fact that it was the 73-9 Warriors had the best regular season in NBA history. That was kind of the Warriors coming out party, although they had won it, right before.
Yeah.
That was, I think, kind of what cemented them as a solid team. But don't mean a thing unless you get that ring.
Yeah.
And they didn't win it. That Game 7 was probably one of the best Game 7s in most sports that I've watched, just for the intensity.
Yeah.
The LeBron chase down block, the Kyrie 3. There was
a lot. It's just kind of crazy how Warriors were probably the best offensive team in the league, and Cavs are probably second best. They're probably they were the 2 best teams, clearly. They were probably the 2 best offensive teams. And for 2 minutes, if not longer, they went without a point.
Yeah, they couldn't
until Kyrie hit the 3. So, by quality of play, maybe not great, especially not at the end, but quality of game, I mean, you can't really beat it. I mean, that's one of the best finals games ever to cement that comeback from down 3-1. I mean, it was pretty good game to top a pretty good series.
I've mentioned on the podcast before that I wasn't really a LeBron James fan growing up. I actually hated it. I did not like him at all. Any chance his team lost, I was pleased. This game actually was kind of the turning point for me, where I was like, this guy is truly great, and I'm not going to spend my time hating on him because he's going to go down as one of the best players to ever play the game. And that Game 7 was really what turned it around for me and why I'm such a LeBron fan.
Maybe we should talk about it when this whole Jordan series is over. But, there's obviously the Jordan-LeBron debates are going on so much now.
Yeah.
And whether you think it's Jordan or LeBron, fine. But there is no denying it's really, really close. I mean, to me, if you put anybody above LeBron besides Jordan, you're wrong. I mean, maybe like Wilt Chamberlain, but it's hard to snow because of the area he played in, But these arguments that I see for why Jordan's better, these people are putting arguments all over Twitter now because of this documentary. It's like, that argument's awful. It's like, whether Jordan's better or not, some of these arguments I see are just terrible. And it just, it heats me up. And then, Kendrick Perkins is a big LeBron supporter, and I see you were liking his stuff, and I'm like, I always see you like it. I'm like, yep, I like it, Jordan. I like what I see.
Yeah. That's probably debate for another time, but nonetheless, I agree 100%. When people bring up rings as their only argument, that's one of the laziest reasons.
Especially in if you're talking golf, then fine, talk majors. That's individual, but it's like, this is a team sport.
But anyways, number 2, what'd you have?
I have Boston comes back from down 3-0 against New York Yankees. One, it's the Yankees, the premier MLB team of history, and at the time was probably, the best team in the league. Boston obviously now is known as the big bad Boston. They're the big bad Boston Red Sox. Besides the Yankees, they're about the most popular team there is. But they hadn't won a World Series in a very long time at this point. They're down 3-0 to the Yankees, and they're down in the 9th inning of Game 4, 8th inning. To be honest, I don't remember exactly. But then the Dave Roberts, the stolen base, is like, that series is known. The most iconic moment during that series is a stolen base, which is for me kind of awesome because I love stealing. But, Dave Roberts steals that base, and they tie it up, and they eventually win the game in like the 13th or 14th inning, and then they go on and win 3 more after that. It was the Kurt Schilling bloody sock.
Yep.
David Ortiz, like always, was a stud in the playoffs. Then they end up winning the World Series too, which ended like a 80-some year drought or something like that of winning one in Boston. So that was pretty cool, and to do it against their number 1 rival, and honestly, I think that's the best rivalry in sports, at least American sports. So I think that was, I don't know, one of the better underdog. I know it's the Red Sox, but let's be honest, it was an underdog story.
I wish I would have been alive. Well, I was alive, obviously. I wish I would have cared more about sports then to actually appreciate that more then than I did.
I can't tell you if I even watched a game, to be honest. I'm sure I probably did. I don't remember it that much. It was a long time ago. But regardless, I was alive, and, Big Papi was a former Twin, it was a pretty awesome series.
For my number 2, I have the Giants beating the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. Again, that game, a lot of people don't really remember is it was not, you think with like the lethal offenses that both of those teams had, you would have thought this would have been a 30-some, 40-some point game. Final score was 17-14. And like of those combined points came in the fourth quarter. But again, it was unbelievable. Another thing too, number 1 is the Giants were actually 12-point underdogs in that series. So the Pats were favored to win by 12. And the route that the Giants had to take to get there, they had to be a solid Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Brett
Favre and the Packers. Yeah. And I think the Cowboys were like 12-4 or something like that. They had I think they had Romo and T.O., right? Yeah, that was a heck of a run. I think the Giants actually played New England like week 16 or week 17 that year and almost beat them in the regular season, but didn't. So the Patriots ended up going undefeated, and then they got them again in the Super Bowl. But
the fact that the Patriots were an undefeated team and had a phenomenal offense like they did and they won was really cool itself.
But this could easily be number 1. They beat the undefeated Patriots. I think the only reason I had it at 4 was, like I mentioned, it's football. So obviously it's still a big upset, and you didn't expect the Giants to win. But all it takes is, one game. The best team's almost always going to win a series, because over time, it's going to average out. But one game, can kind of go any way sometimes. That's the nature of football. That's the only reason I have it at 4, not higher. But yeah.
And number 1, Nicholas Doetkott, what you have as the number 1 sports undefeated underdog story.
University of Maryland, Baltimore County defeats Virginia in March Madness. This might not be the most impressive. Like, it's just one. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is one game. It's not like Boston coming down and winning 4 in a row. But, I mean, let's be honest. A 1 seed had never lost to a 16 seed.
Yep.
I mean, it was, 200-some games, a 16 seed never won. And not only did they win now at UMBC, but they won by like 20, 21. And I remember watching this. I was at the bowling alley, and there was like 10 minutes left in the game. And you're starting to realize, like, this might be happening. And then every minute after that went down by, you're like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to see it. And, I don't think I had Virginia winning, but I'm sure I had them going pretty far. But obviously it's going to ruin everybody's bracket, but I don't care. I'm like, I just want to see this for once. It's so awesome. And they just poured it on them.
They did. That's a great point that you bring up too. You see a lot of times in, upsets or, magical runs. Typically the games are pretty close or back and forth, and maybe one of the teams pulls away at the end. But you're 100% right. UMBC was in control the entire game. Virginia had nothing for them. Obviously, they next year had a pretty solid season because they ended up winning.
With credit to them to come back from that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that was an amazing game. It's one of those things. A lot of these you can remember where you were when you were watching them or maybe heard about them. And that's the exact same for me for that. But that was an amazing game to watch for sure. But for my number one, it is going to be the 04 Red Sox. So down 3-0 in the ALCS, won 4 straight. And then they ended up obviously winning the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. They swept them. So they won 8 straight to win the World Series. Again, one of those things where they tied the game late. Kevin Millar walked, and then obviously, the stolen base, and they got the walk-off winner. But is one of those things where Rivera came in, kind of like Rockies and Hoffman. Hoffman comes in, the game's almost over. Rivera comes in, there's no way they're getting hits off of him, and sure enough, they do, and they. Rivera kept the game tied, but they ended up winning. It's just, to me, multiple things come into play. Not so much that the Red Sox were underdogs as a team. I believe they had like the second highest payroll in all of baseball that season. But it's the fact that it was to the Yankees. They're the biggest rival in sports. The Yankees were in the World Series the year before, lost to the Florida Marlins, and they were coming off of not too long of a run where they were winning or in the World Series every year from like the late 90s and early 2000s. So that was a really, really dominant Yankees team. And obviously the year before that, Yankees beating the Red Sox on a walk-off home run from Aaron Boone to send them to the World Series. So down 3-0 again. That's the only time that's happened in baseball. And there's a reason why it's such an incredibly hard thing to do, to muster out. Maybe 1 or 2 wins could happen, but you have to play your best baseball of the season for 4 straight games.
I mean, it's hard to beat the Detroit Tigers 4 times in a row in baseball. Last year. I mean, it just is.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of things in that series, like you mentioned before, the bloody sock game with Kurt Schilling, Roberts, Ortiz, many heroic moments.
Yeah, I remember watching a documentary. I don't know if it was like an E60 or 30 for 30, one of those, I think, on it, and it was really good. I mean, yeah, like I said, I have it at 2, you had it at 1. I mean, it was amazing what they accomplished, and to do it against the Yankees obviously just makes it even more memorable.
Now, did you have honorable mentions for the list at all?
Yeah, another baseball one. The 2011 Cardinals come to mind because they were like 6.5, 7 back or so with about a month to play, and they ended up rambling off a bunch of wins, making it to the playoffs and winning it all. But I mean, I don't think that was anything like the Rockies or the Red Sox run, but that was impressive. And then some other maybe not so big ones, but like individual guys, like just Kurt Warner's story himself. I mean, he was like nothing. barely even made a team. He was playing for the NFL Europe, and then came back and ends up winning a Super Bowl and making, I think, 2 others, one with 2 different teams. The Dallas Braden perfect game. I don't know if you can really call it an underdog, but I think it's a cool story. I mean, Dallas Braden did not have a very good major league career, but he threw a perfect game on Mother's Day. And then the Seahawks over the Saints, because the Seahawks were 7-9. I think it was the year after the Saints won the Super Bowl, and then Marshawn Lynch had one of the best runs in NFL history. The Beastquake, yeah. So, and I had Appalachian State and Leicester City as honorable mentions for mine. So,
for mine, a couple more, I guess, just individual people. Albert Pujols, again, a guy that was drafted in like the 13th, 14th round, ended up being, when it's all said and done, probably one of the best players to ever play the game. And then Josh Hamilton, obviously when that was drafted out of high school, was one of the best prospects ever to come out of high school. I
think he was number 1 overall pick, right?
I believe so, yep. And, obviously had his struggles with drug addiction and, really couldn't get things going. Eventually got things turned around. Ended up winning the MVP with the Texas Rangers.
Almost won Triple Crown.
Almost won the Triple Crown, and then obviously made it to those 2 straight World Series. If Nelson Cruz knew how to play the ball the right way in right field, he probably would have had a ring on his finger too.
Yep. Yeah. I love me some Nelson Cruz, but a good right fielder possibly could have caught the David Freese triple.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was a well-hit ball, but I don't know. You put like Josh Reddick out there, that game's probably over.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure. But that's all that I had. Nick, did you have anything else you'd like to bring up? Any sports, whatever?
I just really want sports back, man. These top 10 lists are kind of fun, but man, I miss Twins baseball so bad. And I was just thinking today, I miss NBA a lot, obviously, because, I kind of just adopted Lakers as my favorite team. They got the best record or second best record in basketball. But as a Nuggets fan, they're in it. But I'm sure hockey's killing you. Avalanche have like the second best odds to win the cup. I think they're both gonna have an end of the season. I just don't see how you can just say enough. I mean, I think if you have to postpone next season or push it off in order to finish this one, I think that has to be done. I think they're going to do that. I sure hope so.
Something.
Do you think so?
Oh, absolutely. I think.
I mean, you can't just not have a winner,
No. I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know. I've heard maybe now they'll start the season in like December and go to like June and then, July.
I know a lot of people want that like for good for NBA. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it necessarily, although it would make it so like the first 3 months of baseball, ESPN didn't even care about, which I wouldn't like that because I like my MLB. But I know some people want basketball to be December to August just every year, but I don't know.
Colin Cowherd said that he thinks MLB should just have their season end in like August to give like the NFL season, so they're not competing with like any sports. It's like you can't cut the season in August. That's too short of a season.
You're playing 162 games. How are you going to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. Oh well. Yeah, I miss it too. I definitely. I really like these top 10 lists. So anyone listening, please send in more. If there's any top 10 lists you want us to talk about with sports, we'll dig into it. But anyways, that is all the stuff that we had to talk about. If you would like to follow us on Twitter, you can follow myself at Lucas_Dorton, capital L, capital D. If you want to follow Nick on Twitter, it is at Doetkott or Doetkott, whatever is easier for you to Twitter search bar there. And if you want to follow the podcast, definitely give us a follow at DND_pod, capital D's, capital P for that. Again, definitely give us a subscribe on YouTube. Share this with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, certainly let us know, and we'll do our best to get back to you. It's not like we really have anything else going on right now anyway.
Right.
And But anyways, folks, thank you for listening. And as for myself and Nick Duckett, we are out.